Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. My name is Sarah and I'm doing a video that I always am very excited for about the midpoint of every year, and that is the mid-year freakout book tag. So this is a book tag with a series of questions. I think there's about 14 where I kind of just reflect on the books that I've read over the past 6 months, whether that be favorites, least favorites, biggest surprises, biggest disappointments, that kind of a thing. And it's just really interesting to kind of look back on what I've read so far this year and discuss these things. I'll also in a couple weeks be doing a tier ranking video that I do every 6 months to kind of go through one by one each of the books that I've read over the last 6 months and give very brief thoughts on it and tier rank them, which I always like doing as well because then I get to touch on every book that I read, not just the highs and lows. So I am doing this slightly early. Usually I like to do it when June is completely over, but I'm really excited for it, and I've already seen a couple people start posting their videos, so we're doing it just slightly early. So far this year, I have read 30 books, so without further ado, we do have 14 questions to get into, and so we're gonna jump into the first one. So the first question is, of course, the best book that you've read so far in 2024, and I always have a really hard time picking my absolute favorite, and then looking back on the 30 books I've read so far, I've only had 3 5-stars, which I feel like is very low for me. I feel like normally by this time I have like at least 6 maybe, but so far this year 1/10 of what I've read has been a 5-star. Maybe I'm just getting more like picky about what I give 5 stars. I figured I would just talk about all 3 books that I gave 5 stars. So the first one was actually the first book that I read this year, and that is We Spread by Ian Reid. Ian Reid also wrote I'm Thinking of Ending Things, which is a Netflix original movie, and then he also wrote Foe, which is I think gonna be a movie, I think in theaters, either in theaters or it's on like Apple TV or something like that. I'm not sure. Saoirse Ronan is gonna be in it, so that's exciting. But this is actually his newest release. I think it came out last year. All of his books, I haven't read Foe yet, but all of his books kind of have this really quiet storyline where it feels like not much is happening until you get to the end. And then there's, you know, the reveal and everything. And I feel like this reveal was much quieter than the reveal in I'm Thinking of Ending Things, but I feel like this was no less impactful. That being said, I feel like because the story itself is quiet just from start to finish and has a slower, kind of more subdued reveal, if you would, it might not be for everyone. However, I did really love this. We are following our main character, who is an artist. She's an elderly woman, and she one day falls in her kitchen. I think it's in her kitchen. And that's kind of the last straw. Her partner, who has since passed away, set it up so that when she reached kind of a certain point in her life where she needed to go to a assisted living facility, she was then going to be sent to a very kind of exclusive remote assisted living facility. It's in this like old mansion kind of in the middle of nowhere. There's only like 3 or 4 other patients, and then there's the 2 caretakers, and strange things start happening to our main character, and she starts questioning what this facility is. It's hard to explain why I enjoyed this book without giving things away, but I think it does a really good job of exploring what it means to grow old, both for your body, for your mind, for your relationships with people, and just your relationship with yourself. And I think it was just a really well done novel, and I am really looking forward to keeping up with Ian Reid and then continuing on with Foe as well. And then the second book that I gave 5 stars so far this year shouldn't come to any surprise if you have watched my past few videos, and that is The Electric Kingdom by David Arnold. This is a YA dystopian novel, and it's another quieter novel, especially since the fact that this is like a dystopian story. It feels like a very quiet dystopian story, but no less powerful. Again, you're seeing a theme. The third book that I'm going to mention does not follow this theme at all, but for these first two, follows a quiet but powerful theme. So in this book, we're following kind of three main characters as their stories converge through basically a quest. They're all traveling in this post-apocalyptic world to get to some sort of end point, and it's kind of how these people start to learn how to make connections with other people when they've lived in such isolated environments their entire lives, kind of how they learn to develop relationships and how they learn to figure out who they want to be in this very destroyed world and what their future holds for them. It's sad, but it's also very, very beautiful, and again, this is kind of a hard book to explain why I love it so much without spoiling things. I just really enjoyed it. It's very much character focused. The plot is very slow. There are, exciting or kind of tense moments, but I feel like it really is just you learning these characters and kind of following them on their journey, and I just think it's absolutely beautiful. And then the third book that I've given 5 stars so far this year is actually a book that I just recently finished. I haven't done a wrap-up video for it yet, so you'll see me talk about it in my June wrap-up, but that is Fantastic Land by Mike Bakoven. Highly, highly recommend you listening to this on audiobook, because it's so well suited to the audio experience. This is a fiction novel. I want that to be clear, that this is 100% fiction, but it is written very much like it's nonfiction, and like the author is conducting a series of interviews. It's told exclusively through interviews about this tragedy that happened, again, fake tragedy that happened in like 2017 at this fake amusement park called Fantastic Land. It's on the same level of like Disneyland, Disney World, same level of popularity and extravagance. And it is also in Florida. A hurricane hits, and about 300 staff members get trapped inside the amusement park for like 40 days. And it's the story, again, told exclusively through interviews about how the group of people in this amusement park quickly ended up separating into these factions, and it became like a really brutal war zone really, really fast. And it was gripping. The narrators do just a phenomenal job narrating this book. It was gruesome, so if you don't like gore, I think you might want to skip this one, because it does get pretty gory. And it's just kind of a thought experiment on the human condition and what are people's breaking points and what happens when people are bored and scared. And it's just very, very fascinating about just the range of reactions and thought processes to this situation, and how the effect of like a group mentality has on a group of people that are scared and bored and young and inexperienced and really don't know what they're doing. And yeah, it was fascinating. It, again, gory, so if you don't like gore, stay away from it. Very violent, but very, very good. Alright, I feel like I've already just babbled on, and we've only gotten to the first question. So question number 2 is best sequel you've read in 2024, and that would be Royal Assassin and Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb. I read both of these. These are the second and third books in the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb. Specifically, my favorite one is Royal Assassin. I just really appreciated how much we delve into the politics of the Farseer family and the kingdom. And then, not to mention that, where that starts to really kick into gear, we also just really get into Fitz's head in this one. We really get into the nitty-gritty of all of these relationships that he's building with all of these people, and then this like internal turmoil that he's going through. I think that this just takes all of those things that I was hoping were going to build in the first book, and they puts it in the second book, and it's just really phenomenal. Again, this series, I've talked about it several times now over the past few videos as I've been reading it, but this really is character driven. Like, it's a high fantasy story, but it's very much a character driven, so less action, even though it is there, than what you would typically think a fantasy story would give, and more just let's explore this character who's in a very unique position of being a bastard in the royal family and an assassin, and how he gets intermingled in all of these different plot points where the poor boy is way in over his head. But yeah, I think Royal Assassin is my favorite sequel so far of this year. So question number 3 is new release of 2024 that you haven't gotten to yet but you want to, and that is The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton. This is actually my most anticipated release of this year. It came out in May, and I got it really close after it came out. Look at these gorgeous sprayed edges. I bought it at a bookstore and they just had it like this. And I was like, oh, look at these. It just is so pretty with the cover. But yeah, this is my most anticipated release of this year, and I am so scared to read it because I have seen very mixed reviews about it. However, that being said, everybody seems to have very mixed reviews about this man's books anyway, and I've loved the past 2 anyway. So, there's no reason for me to think that I'm not gonna like this one. He wrote The Devil in the Dark Water and The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. I gave The Devil in the Dark Water 4.5 stars, 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle 5 stars. It's one of my favorite books that I read last year. And so I'm very, very, very excited about this one. This has another, kind of speculative element about it, where some sort of weird fog has taken over the world and killed off a bunch of people. But there was, a group of scientists that were able to kind of protect this one island, and there's some sort of weird barrier that holds the fog at bay. However, one of those scientists has now been murdered, and the barrier has since, broken. And so there's a countdown of so many hours that the people on this island have to solve the mystery of who killed the scientist and how to fix the barrier. I don't remember how many hours it is. It's 107 hours. The fog will smother the island and everyone in it. However, somehow everyone's memories has been wiped from the night before of when the murder happened. So nobody remembers what happens, including the murderer. So somebody on here is a murderer and trying to help solve this crime, and doesn't even know that they're the one that did it. And so excited for this. So excited for this. So this is my most anticipated release of this year, and it's the newest release that I am most looking forward to getting to right now. Question number 4 is the most anticipated release of the second half of 2024 that I am looking forward to. So it's not out yet, comes out later in the year, and I think that would be I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. I literally do not know what this book is about. I just saw Stephen Graham Jones on it, and I was like, immediately, I need to read it. I need it, and I'm looking forward to it, and just by the title, I'm assuming we're following a main character who is a teenage slasher, and I loved My Heart is a Chainsaw, I loved Night of the Mannequins, I just really enjoy Stephen Graham Jones's books, and I purposely don't want to know more about what it's about. I kind of want to just go in with the idea of what the title is and just go in kind of blind with it and be excited and surprised by it. So yeah, that is my most anticipated release of the second half of 2024. So question number 5 is biggest disappointment, and I kind of have 2 answers to this depending on how you look at the question. If we're looking at it as a book that I was really excited for and it just didn't live up to the level, but I still liked it, it was meh, that would be Last to Leave the Room by Caitlin Starling. I loved Caitlin Starling's other books, The Luminous Dead and The Death of Jane Lawrence. Loved them, and they're 2 quite different books. One is a gothic horror, the other is more of a isolated sci-fi horror. And so I was thrilled to find out that she had a new book, came out last year. I was really looking forward to reading it, and it was just meh. It was not on the same level, in my opinion, as the other two. I just did not get into this one nearly as much, and I had really high hopes for it because I liked the idea of the premise. Basically, we're following this scientist who is tasked with kind of leading this team to discover why this city is sinking, and she finds that her basement is actually sinking faster than the rest of the city is, and pretty soon this door appears in her basement that was never there before, and a doppelganger of hers, like an exact replica, appears. However, their personalities are like night and day, and weird things start happening from there. Yeah, I just really liked the premise, and I explained in my review that while her previous two books had this like steady, slowly increasing sense of dread, and it was just like, it was a steady like pace of increase, and it just really gripped you that way. This one had like this weird, like, it would kind of just like, I don't know, it would ebb and flow in a way that didn't hold my attention nearly as much as the way her previous two books did. So I think in terms of most excited but didn't live up to the hype that I had for it, this would be my biggest disappointment. However, if we're looking at a book that I was enjoying while I was reading it and having a cute little time, and then something happened and it completely turned me off to the book, that would be The Duke and I by Julia Quinn. This is the first book in the Bridgerton series. I also have not talked about this book in my final thoughts on it. I briefly mentioned it in my May wrap-up because I was still in the middle of it and still enjoying it at that point. I am going to talk more about why I didn't like it in my June wrap-up because it's a long story, and I'm gonna give spoiler-free and spoiler kind of explanation of it. Basically here, the reason why I just like flipped the switch is because the conflict resolution completely brushed under the rug a very problematic conflict, and I wouldn't have had a problem with the conflict if the characters actually discussed it and had a resolution to it, instead of just saying like, oh no, I'm over it, it's totally fine. With the type of conflict it was, that was not okay to me. And I will say here, spoiler alert, I gave it 1 star because I thought that it was handled horribly. So those are probably my 2 biggest disappointments so far this year. So 6th question is biggest surprise. So I had kind of a hard time answering this question because you can look at this multiple ways. However, I did pick Hunted by Darcy Coates for a couple different reasons. I didn't really have much expectation going into this. I couldn't decide if this was the type of horror book that I was going to enjoy before going into this. And so I was just giving it a shot because somebody that I trust recommendation-wise read it and really liked it, and I ended up loving it. I gave it 4 stars, but like a really, really good 4 stars. And I just was gripped the entire time, and I want to read more of this author's work. I didn't realize like how big of a backlog she has, but she has quite a few books out, so I'm definitely going to be picking up more of her work in the future. I also just was surprised with the twist on this type of story, I guess. And again, I don't want to spoil too much, but I was just surprised with where this book went. So basically in this one, it's kind of like a survival / rescue mission where we're following a group of friends, and one of them, his sister had went hiking up in this mountainous forest, and she was there for vacation, and suddenly she just kind of like disappears. She was keeping up on like posting online and things like that, like progress of her vacation, and then all of a sudden those posts stop, nobody can get a hold of her, and then the police aren't really taking it seriously. They're not putting in nearly as much effort as they should be because they're really stretched thin. So these friends take it upon themselves to go into the forest and search for her themselves, and of course things go wild. Yeah, and this was just, I was gripped. Like, I flew through this book. I think I just gave it 4 stars because I wanted a little bit more out of the characters. I felt like there could have been a lot more, a bit more like character development, character growth, but like in terms of pacing and just the like tension and the atmosphere, oh, they were so good. Very peak tension, peak atmosphere, peak pacing. It was very entertaining. So I think that was my biggest surprise. So next question is favorite new author. This can be either new to you / me, new to me, or a debut author. And I would say Robin Hobb is a new favorite of mine. Again, author of the Farseer trilogy and several other trilogies that all make up her entire universe of Realm of the Elderlings that I do plan on continuing. And I just really enjoy how she writes characters and how she fleshes out every single character. Side characters are so unique and so beloved. Like, I loved so many of these characters so much, and how they just developed these really intricate relationships with our main character. I just think that that's where she thrives. And if you, again, I've said this so many times, if you like character-driven fantasy, I think you will really like these books. Just know that they are very slow-paced because it's character-focused. But I think that she's phenomenal, and I definitely plan on continuing working through her backlog. So question number 8 is newest fictional crush, and I'm gonna skip this one. I just always feel weird answering it, and I don't really have an answer to this question. Question number 9 is newest favorite character, and I'm gonna, again, hold up the Robin Hobb books because my favorite character is the Fool. I loved this character. He was funny. Very interesting, just he's a very complex character, but I just really enjoyed his humor. I enjoyed his devotion to those that treated him well. Then he was gonna devote himself, like, just fully to them. And just his very interesting backstory. He definitely, there's a lot more to learn about this character when he makes his appearance in future trilogies, and I am very much looking forward to that. So question number 10 is book that made you cry, and do I even need to hold the book up? The Electric Kingdom by David Arnold. Hi, so my camera died. So if the lighting or anything looks different, I had to charge my camera before I can continue this. But like I was saying, for a book that made me cry, that would be The Electric Kingdom. I spent like there was like a part in here about 3/4 of the way through that I cried at, and then there were like the last 80 pages. I was just crying the entire time. But just beautiful book. The one about 3/4 of the way through was sad. Like, that was just pure sad. The one for the last 80 pages, there was like a weird mix of sad, and then it was like bittersweet, I guess. Sad, bittersweet, and just kind of, it's really hard to explain. But yeah, this is the book that made me cry the most this year, and I don't think anything else has really made me cry. Oh no, I teared up a little bit in Assassin's Quest. I did cry a little bit there, but I think this is the only other one that I can think of that's really made me cry this year. And then the next question is a book that made you happy. So I feel like this is just a hard question for me to answer because I don't read a lot of like happy books, like just that are purely meant to be lighthearted, upbeat, fun books. Like, I read a lot of like fantasy, thrillers, murder mysteries, and horror. Like, that's mainly what I read. However, I'm going with a book that's kind of made me laugh a bit, and I am in the middle of it actually, and that is The Last Word by Taylor Adams. It's supposed to be, at least I feel like it's supposed to be partially comical. So basically, I'm halfway through. It's not happy, it's just comical. So in this book, we are following our main character who is house sitting for like the off season at this beach house, alone with her dog, and she's got a neighbor that lives a 1/4 mile away, and that's about it. She's pretty remote. She reads a lot of ebooks on her Kindle, and she reads one called Murder Mountain and gives it 1 star and leaves a pretty scathing review, and then the author doesn't like that and starts coming for her. And it's very much a cat and mouse game between her and this author in this very remote setting. And the author is 100% just like an incel. And it's so comical to see him described by the main character, and we get flip-flop points of view of her describing what's happening and him describing what's happening, and the like disconnect between the two points of view is really funny. It's funny in a way where like you can tell the author like did all this on purpose. He wants you to find the like villain is sinister and unsettling. You take him seriously enough, but you almost don't take him seriously, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I've been enjoying that, finding it very comical. So question number 12 is the most beautiful book that you've bought so far this year, and I have really toned down on my special editions. Over the past year or so, I unsubscribed from a lot of the book boxes that I was subscribed to. I really was only subscribed to 3 at one point. Book of the Month. I was subscribed to Owl Crate at one point. I was subscribed to the Fairy Loot Adult Edition. I have since canceled all 3 of those. And now I am only subscribed to the Illumicrate Nevernight box, which is the quarterly horror subscription. So you, 4 times a year, there's a special edition of a horror book that I get. And that's the only box that I am subscribed to. I liked the last special edition I got. It was Murder Road by Simone St. James, but I wouldn't say it's the most beautiful book that I've bought so far. I really like this cover for like its simplicity and just like this almost like melting flower is really pretty. Supplication by Noir Abbey Nicole. This is actually also a new release, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't know much about it. I was just really intrigued by this little like tagline, is everything I was before the room is gone. And that like caught my eye, and then I'd heard I think Books and Lala was talking about it, where this was an anticipated release this year for her, and I trust her with horror recommendations. So yeah, the book really doesn't, the back of the book doesn't really tell you much. It says, a thought had presented itself to me, one that I was scared to think. I knew I had touched something I wasn't supposed to, something that no one was supposed to touch. Now I knew the impossible, terrible truth of things. I had stumbled into a room hidden behind a false panel, where there lay something secret and obscure, the sight of which would irrevocably change the viewer. And just, that's so vague, but still just caught my attention. But I really love this cover. And then my other one, I just really love the cover of The Last Murder at the End of the World. Love the cover, love the fact that they're just like these turquoise teal edges. Yeah, I just love these colors on this cover. But I think these are, I just realized there's a little shark fin in the water here. I did not notice that before. I just really like these covers. And then the final question, question number 13, is what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And I swear, I feel like everybody just collectively hates this question. And typically, I agree. I usually hate this question because it's like, all of them, all of the books. I need to read as many on my TBR as I possibly can, because I've got so many that I want to read. That being said though, I do have a couple that I really do want to try to get to by the end of this year. A big one is that I want to catch up on Stephen Graham Jones's backlog. I have yet to read The Only Good Indians. I'm gonna try to force my dad to finally do the buddy read with me, because I've been holding off on this for quite a long time now because he has a copy as well and we were going to do a buddy read. So I finally want to be able to get to this year. I feel like this is the one that catapulted Stephen Graham Jones into kind of like mainstream horror. He's obviously had like multiple others that were before The Only Good Indians, but I feel like this is the one that like got, at least this is the one that got him on my radar. But then like Mongrels came out before The Only Good Indians, and I really want to read this one. And then The Angel of Indian Lake is the final book in the, what is it even called? The first book is My Heart is a Chainsaw, and the second one is Don't Fear the Reaper. The Indian Lake trilogy, it says on the back. Yeah, so this is the third and final one, and I've been nervous to read this one. I do want to do a reread of My Heart is a Chainsaw and Don't Fear the Reaper. I read Don't Fear the Reaper last year, I think. but I want to reread both of them before I get to this one. So yeah, these, I definitely want to catch up on Stephen Graham Jones, especially because he is coming out with that other book this year. And then I also want to make progress on my Cosmere adventure through Brandon Sanderson's backlog. I'm trying to remember when the last time I picked up one of his books was, and it's been a while. I read the first era of the Mistborn trilogy. I've read Elantris and I've read Warbreaker, and kind of in the recommended order, I'm now needing to read the second era of the Mistborn trilogy. So that is, the first one is the Alloy of Law, and I am really looking forward to this one because it feels like a lot of people just really love this second era of the Mistborn series because it's like Wild West fantasy. I love that like mashup of genres. I think it's really fun, so I need to just finally get started on this. And then I also really do want to start picking up other like epic or high fantasy series. I've got a couple on my stack here, but those are my answers for the mid-year freak out book tag for the first half of 2024. If you've read any of these books, or if you're looking to read any of them, let me know down in the comments below. I'd also love to hear some of your answers. What are some of your favorites that you've read so far? Biggest surprises, books that have made you really happy, your favorite sequels, books that have made you cry, because I love books that make me cry. Even though it's an emotional roller coaster, I still really love those books that elicit a strong emotional reaction. And then what are your biggest disappointments so far this year, and what are you looking to get to going forward? But thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you consider sticking around and subscribing if you haven't already. But as always, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!